Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. As always, here with my co-host, Hall of Famer, Mr. Steve Flink. This is the first episode we've done since the last Slam of the year. We took 1 year off. Obviously, Laver Cup.
1 week.
1 week. What'd I say? 1 year?
Yeah. I don't think
1
we take
week.
a year off.
When I don't see you, it feels like a year, Steve. That's how much I enjoy it. So 1 week off, and then we had Laver Cup. Obviously, we had some interesting developments in Guadalajara as well. Congrats to Maria Sakkari, and what a great week for someone who's about 30 minutes away from where I currently live, Steve, from Hinsdale, Illinois. Caroline Dolehide, great week for both Maria and Caroline. We're going to get into that. But let's start with Laver Cup, Steve, in Vancouver. I think we all knew that it was going to be very tough to even come remotely close to all the emotions and everything that happened last year, not only with having the big four there, but they were all there, obviously, for Roger Federer and the last match of his career. So it wasn't going to be like that. Team World with a rout 13-2. This is the second year in a row that they've won. I'll kind of leave it to you for your thoughts, and we can kind of go through the days if you want.
Yeah, I would say, David, that it just sounds kind of mundane when we think of 13-2, and it was a rout because Team Europe only got one match in the 3 days. But I must say, having watched it all on television, it was surprisingly exciting at times, especially the doubles. And I got a chance to watch Arthur Fils, the Frenchman, who was really quite remarkable. I hadn't seen much of him this year. Now I see why he climbed into the top 50, because he opened up against Ben Shelton. Terrific first set, which he lost in a breaker, and then he went down 6-1, but good effort. And then we saw Francisco Cerundolo defeated Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, who had come from Davis Cup and didn't seem that well acclimated and lost in straight, but tennis wasn't bad. And then we had the one kind of odd ball moment of the week, which is always going to happen, and that was Monfils playing against FAA. And Gael tried hard up until the end of the first set. It seemed like he was competing hard, and then kind of threw away his serve at 4-5. And he kind of just played an awful game as if he didn't care. Then had a love 40 opening early in the second, didn't take advantage of it, and played another really terrible game on his serve. And that pretty much settled it. He lost 4-3. But I think his teammates and the fans were a bit disappointed in him. And he was trying to say to his teammates, it's supposed to be about entertainment. But I think what he didn't understand was, yes, it's a little looser and there's a lot more smiling. And so it does set itself apart from even Davis Cup in that regard. But the players have always tried their hardest. And Monfils got the message when he came back to play doubles after that. But that was unfortunate because I think he kind of misconstrued, and I think everybody let him know that it was wrong.
Are you surprised that they count these as head-to-head? I don't think they should.
I don't either. No, I don't either. I agree. But what I'm saying is they're staging it as a professional event. They don't want to be seen as an exhibition. And that's why I think the Laver Cup pushed for it. I didn't agree either. I would have preferred that they didn't count the results. But that's what eventually happened. But even before they did that, you saw guys giving it 100% effort and treating it seriously. And it's not that Monfils was that way the entire time on the court against FAA, but at crucial moments he was, and he kind of let himself down a bit. And that was too bad because the tennis was quite good aside from a couple of those bad passages when Monfils was just not there mentally or physically. So suddenly that's 3 points immediately for Team World.
Yeah, let's stop. So for the listeners that don't know, Friday's matches count for 1 point, Saturdays are 2, and Sunday's 3. So even if you're down big, Sunday, you can still make up a lot of ground quickly, but that's the format. So I'll let you continue now with Team World up 3-0.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for clarifying on that. So then we got to the last match of Friday evening, very entertaining doubles. Tommy Paul joining Francis Tiafoe to defeat Rublev and Fils. And they won 10-6 in a tiebreak. No, sorry, that one was Gale actually. But the point is, it was a 10-6 third set tiebreak, super tiebreak. Once again, though, it's Team World that prevails. So they got a 4-zip lead going into the second day. with the 4 1-point wins. And then we go to the second day, and immediately it's Taylor Fritz defeating Rublev. And a nice comeback from Taylor. Won the first set comfortably, went down 4-1 in the second, and then got it into a tiebreak and played an impeccable tiebreak. So that's now worth 2 points, increasing the lead for Team World to 6-0. And then finally on the board for Team Europe, because Casper Ruud, who, as you know, has been something of a slump, considerable slump since reaching the French Open final against Djokovic in June. He defeated Tommy Paul, and it was a well-played first set, a tiebreaker that went to Ruud. He saved a set point in the tiebreak, and that ended up being critical, and he rolled through the second set 6-2. So they were on the board. But then Tiafoe got Team World back on track again very quickly with a really first-rate performance, David, against Hurkacz, 5-3. Played really well, served exceptionally well the whole match, and managed to start making good returns off Hubie's big first serve. So that got Team World back going again. And then we had Shelton join FAA to defeat Hubie and Monfils. This was Monfils, but this is Monfils' appearances. I'm confusing the first, that he didn't play the first. This was his doubles appearance, which was 5-4. And the big difference in Shelton and FAA's victory was that Monfils was a little shaky on the volley. He was trying hard, but he was probably the most vulnerable player up at the net of the four by far. And I think that made a difference in a 5-4 win for Team World.
And I think everyone saw the highlight with Shelton's return. That one return that he hit was just ridiculous, lightning fast for a winner.
Oh yeah, it was. And just to clarify, that match on the first day was Tiafoe and Paul, and the doubles was against Rublev and Fils, and that was the one that went to the super tiebreak in the third. And then the end of the second day was Shelton and FAA winning this one in straight sets. And as I say, Monfils was the weak link on the court there, but it was a good, entertaining match. All the doubles were. So we go to that meant it was 10-2.
10-2, Steve.
Yeah, so that meant today was obviously it was going to be nearly impossible for Team Europe to pull a comeback.
Let me stop you there for a second, because I even sexted and you and I told you this earlier. The person who we do the end of the year segment with, our good friend David Sakkari, him and his family were in Vancouver and was there for these 3 days. And I texted him on Saturday morning. If you looked at the matches on paper, even though after Friday it was 4-0 Team World, if you looked at the matchups on paper, I could have said Team Europe could have dominated Saturday as opposed to Team World doing. I mean, you looked at the matchups, they're pretty even.
They were even, yeah. They certainly, you would have thought, would have been in it. It would have been tight, and it wasn't at all. So then that really put the Team World in a really advantageous position going into today. So sure enough, Tiafoe and Shelton, who of course were the two heroes, I would say, combined for Team World, because they each were unbeaten in doubles and singles. They won their singles and then won a couple of doubles each. So they joined forces today, and they beat Rublev and Hurkacz. And the Rublev-Hurkacz team was pretty tough. It was a couple of tiebreakers, but Team World came through to win that one, and that clinched it. It was 13-2, so they played an EXO later in the day just for the benefit of the fans, and Milos Raonic came out, which was nice for the fans in Vancouver, but the match meant nothing, and really had nothing.
If you're spending some decent amount of money for Sunday, it's a risk you're taking, because these exhibition matches, they'll do it, but you're guaranteed something good Friday and Saturday. Sunday, you could get an amazing day because everything could be on the line, or the opposite of what happened today, where it's basically done. It is done after the very first match.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But, in this case, the EXO was not terrible, and they got a chance to see Chris Eubanks in action, and they got to see Milo, so it wasn't all bad. But, yeah, it's unfortunate and very unusual to have the first match of the last day decide it all and have everything be done. But I will say the fans were still pretty exhilarated for the most part, and very supportive of Team World, but polite to Team Europe. And the tennis overall was pretty well played, and there were some great moments out there across the 3 days. And it just was not the day. Go ahead. Sorry, the one thing I just want to add, it just was not, as you know, the most glittering field that they've had. We think of all those past years, we've been spoiled, because you mentioned last year with the Big Four, Roger playing every year, up through last year. he's always there. And I think he was injured once, but he was participating year in and year out, and the sort of the central performer. Rafa a couple of different years. Novak was there a couple of times, including last year. So they had all these guys, Murray, as you mentioned. So it was a bit of a letdown not to have any of the real superstars. And then a few stars did pull out this year, like Tsitsipas, who cited some kind of an injury. So they really was not the best field. On the other hand, the guys that were there were happy to be there and put on a pretty good show.
Of course. And yeah, we're basically thinking the same thing, because I was just going to emphasize what you stated there, that I think why this event has been so good is because of the star power that the fields have had, right? And I was there in Chicago when they had it in the fall of 18. Novak and Roger played doubles together and they were playing. So yeah, the star power, I think, has really made this event as big as it has been. And you think, they asked Roger later about who he would like to see on Team Europe next year. And he mentioned two individuals. That's Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz. And if he can get those two players, I mean, there's your star power right back at it for the following year.
It's going to be difficult. I mean, they'll be fortunate to get one. The timing is not great. It's tricky after the Open. Last year, everybody made a special effort. And in Djokovic's case, last year, he hadn't been permitted to play the Open because he hadn't taken the vaccine. So he was a lot more rested and ready to go. And then Rafa made the special trip in to play the doubles. And that was unusual. If Roger's able to get one of the two, if they manage to get both, that is some accomplishment, I would say.
I would hope. Again, I mean, it's been such a positive event, and the top players have really enjoyed playing it. Carlos has not had the opportunity to play it yet. I would think if he was healthy enough to do it, he'd jump at the opportunity. But again, getting Novak to also play that event, I think that would get a huge boost to the event, because the previous years, Steve, I mean, it's been top notch. And personally, when it was in Chicago, I didn't know. Chicago is such a pro sports team oriented city. I didn't know how it would be. They sold it out every session in Chicago. And this is now 5 years ago. And it's been like that everywhere it's been played. I think you're right. This year, the star power was lacking a little bit. We said it in the intro as well. You're not going to have it what it was last year, because last year was just so special. But I'm all for this event. I love it. And I hope it continues. And as long as we keep getting the top players, it's going to continue to be a great event.
Yeah, I think so. The question is going to be, are they going to have fields that are comparable to this year, or are they going to be able to get those stars back? And it's always going to depend, at least partially, on dates, how close it is. I'm not actually certain. They put the date up, but I'm not certain when the date. It sounds like similar time frame though for next year, which means that
if that is in Berlin, right? It's going to be in Berlin,
right? So again, that's tricky. How many guys are going to want to do it? They'll sometimes sacrifice for Davis Cup. Djokovic went over for Davis Cup this year immediately after the Open, but it's very hard to. And Carlos had done that last year, by the way. This time he didn't go back to even play Davis Cup. So you see what they're up against with their schedules. And Roger knows that better than anybody. But there's no reason that he shouldn't hope for the best.
Right. I agree. So next year, Berlin, we'll see what happens with the event. Team World now on a 2-year winning streak. They lost the first 4, but they got 2 in a row. So we'll see what happens next year. All right, let's move on to Guadalajara, and 2 players that I've followed closely. I've talked about Maria Sakkari numerous episodes on this podcast. We've known since 2021, when she got to the semis of 2 slams, the struggles that she has had. Since that time, especially in the slams, it's been real poor results. That's not being critical. It's just being factual. And she would admit that her results in the slams have not been good. She wins a 1,000 level event. Again, to me, and we've talked about this before. I don't think there should be 1,000 level events after the last slam. Here you have Caroline Dolehide, who has had success in doubles. She's made the semis and doubles of Wimbledon and US Open. She's hovered around the 100 ranking in singles. Big game, physical, big game, likes to dictate with the forehand. She committed to UCLA. Her sister actually played UCLA, but she committed to UCLA. She didn't play. She decided to turn pro. good looking player. Again, likes to dictate with that forehand. Had an incredible week. She's now 100. She was 111 going into Guadalajara. She'll now be top 50. Again, kudos to her. That's huge. You look at the draw, and the draw is not your typical 1,000 level draw. And we say that a lot in the fall, right? You look at a draw like Indian Wells or Miami, you got almost every top player playing there. Great move for Caroline. And this is going to help her get into a lot of other tournaments now, direct entry. I don't know. I just have a problem with the 1,000 level. We all remember the 2017 Paris Masters, where someone went from 25 to 8, got into the World Finals. Then you saw what happened after that. Yeah, that may be the exception to the rule, but I don't know. There's probably legalities on why you can't do it, Steve. But if it was a perfect world for me, I would freeze the rankings and you pick a number at 20 or 30. Let's just say 30. And those top 30 players are done after the slam. Then rankings 31 through 200, 300, whatever. They can play for dollars and ranking points, knowing you can never leapfrog to wherever you froze the rankings at, let's say, 30. Now, again, these are all independent contractors. They're not employees of teams. So like, it's not like they're getting paid by their team and they have an off season. Like I'm sure there's legalities of restricting work. I haven't looked into it that much, but it just seems a little goofy to me, with huge slides in ranking points after the slam.
Well, the reason I think they do it, David, they're trying to keep the races for number one alive. They really want to keep the top players motivated to end the season strong. It doesn't always work. For instance, Djokovic this year, I mean, if he really wanted to battle Carlos out for the number one ranking, which has been an exciting battle all year long between the two, he'd be playing more than he's planning to right now. But he's probably not going to come back, at least as it appears now, until that Paris 1000 for the men, which means that Carlos will have 2 or 3 events to close the gap and maybe pass Novak in that period. While if Novak, again, so it doesn't always work, but often it does, in the sense of keeping them motivated and keeping, large amount of points available to the players. Same with the women, so that their interest level remains very high. Motivationally, they're still driven to succeed at the end of the year.
I think the sport is so physical now. I just think it's so physical now that these top players have gone and they played a lot of matches that maybe the men and women that are 31 and higher, they haven't got as many matches in as far as going deep into draws. This may give them an opportunity to do that. Again, there's probably legalities why this won't work. I get that.
Well, yeah, legalities, but it's also just the nature of the structure of the tour. You remember 2016, it came down to Murray versus Djokovic in the final of the year-end championships, with the number one ranking literally on the line. The winner of that match was going to finish the year number one. Those moments.
Why can't they do that 3 weeks after the last slam?
Well, that I wouldn't mind that, to tell you the truth, but that's, the season is too long. I mean, the women cut back and then they seem to have added again. So I would prefer to have the season over for everybody by the end of October. But that's not the case right now. But I'm saying I'm just trying to present the positive side of it, because I think of a lot of year-end, especially for the men. I think of and quite a few women's as well. Some really excellent year-end championships where everybody is still pushing hard to end the year, either make sure they end the year number one or get as high as they can in the top 5 to carry them in with momentum into the next year. But you're no question that the seasons are too long. And then it becomes incumbent on the players to make sure they don't get carried away and they pull out of events that they just shouldn't play for the sake of preserving themselves long term. And the smart ones do that.
And please note that I'm not picking on any of the 1,000. Steve, you know this, but just for the listeners, I'm not picking on any of the events, the 1,000 level events that are after the slam. It could be any, it's just the schedule is the schedule. If Indian Wells and Miami was after the fall, I'd have the same, is in the fall, I'd have the same opinion. I'm not like attacking any event that's on the schedule now. I'm just saying conceptually, I think you should get rid of the 1,000s after the last slam.
Yeah. Well, I get you. I hear you, but I don't think it will happen, because I think they're going to always feel the need to keep that last chunk of the year, incentive wise high. But the point I most agree on is the shorter season, and we've all been talking about that forever, because they
Forever.
don't get time off before suddenly it's Christmas and they're having to head down under to Australia for the first major of the year and try to get a warm-up tournament in. So it's a little bit crazy that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, Steve, we've gotten through the slams. We've gotten through Laver Cup. We just saw a really positive result from Maria Sakkari, who's been dying for a good result lately. Hopefully this gives her a boost for the rest of the year, hopefully into 2024.
Well, David, a quick word, just if I may. It was good effort from Sakkari in that final, though, because she was up 4-2 in the first set and lost the next 3 games. Yeah. You had this terrible feeling that she was going to lose her 7th final in a row, and she hadn't won a final since 19. And it was like, oh no, not again. Nothing against Carolyn, who had a great tournament, and if she'd won it, she would have deserved it. But I think Sakkari needed this tournament more than Carolyn did, and I was happy for her that she conquered her nerves, pulled out the first set, and won it in straight sets. And so that was for her because you talk about how she knows she's performed badly in the slams, but she also knows that she hasn't been able to give her best effort always in these finals, and that she's been criticized a lot for it. And now that she's had a chance to kind of silence her critics and regain her confidence, and that was a good thing.
And she mentioned Coco's acceptance speech during Maria's acceptance speech, how she enjoyed hearing Coco saying, look, I read Twitter, I read the haters, and that inspires me. It puts more, fuel to the fire type of thing. And Maria's kind of taken that same approach with it. And it was interesting to let her hear that. And I mean, you get a lot of abuse. Any professional athlete, any public figure, I won't just say athlete, any public figure now, just with so much access, people tweeting whatever the heck they want. There's so much criticism out there. It's nice to hear some of them say, you know what, we read what you crazy people type. And you know what, sometimes we could actually use that as fuel instead of, putting it down. Because I mean, mentally, that's a big mental health problem right now for these athletes to read this stuff after tough losses. And it was refreshing to hear Coco and Maria share that perspective.
Yeah, it would be nice to see a lot of the athletes, and I know why they don't, but boy, would I love to see some of them take a vacation from social media. Just say, I'm not going on it for a month. I'm not even going to look at I don't care what's on there, and I'm not posting anything. And I'm going to get some peace of mind.
I think some in the press and some players really do lay low on it, but I think in today's society, it's challenging to do that. But to your point, Steve, I think there are a few that really just stay off it and ignore it. But yeah, the majority are on it, and it's pretty disgusting what you see and read on these social media channels at times. But kudos to Maria, kudos to Caroline, kudos Team World. What else? Are we good?
No, I think we're good. I think it was a fun week, and as I say, I enjoyed those matches more than I had anticipated, and now I'm looking forward to all the ATP Tour and WTA events coming up. But that was a nice to see that after kind of laying low in my case, and I think you too, for a week after the Open, just then come back nearly 2 weeks later and see some good tennis.
Yeah, this was a fun week. This was really a fun week. Thanks for your time, Steve. I enjoyed this.
Okay, thank you, David.